Yeah, I was thinking if you don't mind, we'll
Facebook people?
maybe play a track off the new Harold record and a Heather track, and maybe
absolutely
talk about that stuff a little bit.
I think I grabbed stuff you did with Repeating Arms. I grabbed Out of Town. I grabbed some New Old Fashioned. But we can drop whatever you like. I mean, I love that Harold record.
Yeah, maybe put Skin and Bones on there.
Nice. All right, here we go. Mics are hot. And there you go, the New Old Fashioned here on your Tuesday afternoon alternative from their EP Big City. That was I Don't Want to Lose My House. And they played Dayton Music Fest this weekend, and it was so good. It feels like a holiday to me. And I am so happy because my good friend David Payne, who wrote that song that you just heard, is here in the studio. Hi, David.
Hey, Art. Thanks for having me back, man.
Oh, you are always welcome. Right? I feel like I should set up a cot in the back.
Yeah.
Now, you got a lot on your plate. You are working on a country record. You are playing in Heather Redman and The Reputation. So the country stuff, that's the Midwest business machine, right?
Right. Well, I'm working on a solo record that a couple of those guys have done a little bit of playing on, but that's my solo country band. We do a bunch of my solo songs, like honky tonk versions of a bunch of my previous solo songs, and we've been playing a lot of the newer songs in the set, as well as a bunch of our favorite country songs from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s.
It's about broad brush, man.
Yeah, it's about half and half.
Yeah. Well, I'm just curious. You're how many groups are you in? I mean, you were involved in at least 5 or 6 different projects.
I'm in 4 bands.
Okay. We're officially.
The New Old Fashioned has, of course, always been my baby, and with my best buds, and then I'm playing with my wife Heather Redman, and been backing up Harold Hensley on some of his solo gigs, and then we've got the business machines.
So I'm just curious then. How different is it to like shift from making country music to, right? Heather's music cuts across different genres, and then the New Old Fashioned is whether it's rock and roll or kind of alt country feel to it. Do you ever get like a little confused?
I don't think so. The great thing is I get to play all of my favorite kinds of music.
Right.
That roots rock, country, and soul music, that's, over the last decade or so, that's been, the 3 things that are on my turntable most of the time, or in my car most of the time. So being able to do a little bit of all of that is super fun and really special.
It almost sounds like having your cake and eating it too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That you don't have to say, oh, well, I really wish I could make a honky tonk record, or I really wish I could make a rock and roll record or a soul record, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Just
do it.
The freedom that's your advice.
Yeah.
Just get out there and do it.
Do it.
Well, and my question is probably showing my own foolishness and my own lack of musical knowledge, because I have to remind myself, like, okay, what classes am I teaching today?
Yeah.
So that's got to be a lot, but.
Keeping up with the schedule is the hard part.
As
long as I can keep up with the schedule, I'm good.
Well, I'm also curious. I know we were talking this weekend that you guys in the New Old Fashioned have been working on some stuff.
Yeah. We consciously took some time off from playing as much as we had been. We hit the COVID slowdown that everybody else did, and we started booking some shows here and there, and just to kind of get back at it. And then we quickly realized it'd been too long since we worked on some new music together, so we consciously made the decision to slow down a little bit and focus on writing new stuff. Right, we're writing more together as a group this time around than I think we have previously. A lot of it's been either mostly me or occasionally bringing a song to the group, and we kind of figure out what our arrangement's going to be together. Whereas this time around, we also, we're making a conscious effort to make more of a rock and roll record, because I think, even though we've had the Americana and country influences going forever, I think at our core, we're a rock and roll band.
Yeah.
And, that's where the common ground between the four of us as players is. And I think we felt like it was important to dig into that a little bit more. So the new stuff is definitely more, hooky rock and roll, and a little less, country tinged than some of the other stuff, may have been in the past, which is great for me personally, because I still have that other outlet where I get to play in a straight up country band,
right? And
we get to do that stuff, and then I get to play rock and roll music with my rock and roll buddies in my rock and roll band. So, it's that's really nice, and been super fun, and I'm excited about the new stuff the New Old Fashioned's working on. We're not quite to the point where we're like ready to go in the studio yet. I think we've got like 67 tunes that are, some are more done than others, and we've been playing a few of them out here and there when we do play, and just trying to kind of take our time with them, and get it to where we want it before we take it in the studio, and trying real hard not to rush something out this time. I think that's for a local band with day jobs and stuff, it's hard to keep up with the release schedule you would like to keep up with.
Oh yeah.
So I think there's a lot of us that feel rushed to put something out because it's been so long, or we've had these songs so long and the recording process took us longer than it would a national touring band. So we thought we got to get this out as soon as possible, and we're really trying not to do that this time, because I feel like maybe there's been a little bit of that before, where it's like, we don't want to sit on these songs any longer. They need to come out now.
Yeah. Well, but by the time you release a record, an EP, a single, you've lived with that song for years.
Right. And hopefully that's not the case this time, because even when I'm coming in with an idea, some of the ideas have come just through us kind of jamming together at practice a little bit. We always just, somebody starts playing a riff and that's how we warm up at practice, and that's how a lot of bands do it. And we've been a little more conscious of, if something's good, to keep visiting it and seeing if something comes of it. And then when I've been writing lately, it's been like, I can tell, okay, like this is a New Old Fashioned song pretty quickly once I start writing it. And when I do that, I try really hard to leave it as open-ended as possible and have an idea for a song. That way we can, finish the song as a band, and not get, a bunch of ideas in my head of how this song is going to sound, because that's usually not how it happens in this band anyway.
Oh, really? Why do you say that?
My favorite example is a song off of our second record, Low Down Dirty Summer Nights. It's called True to Me, True to You. And when I wrote that song, I thought I was writing a soul song. I've been listening to a lot of Ray Charles and Otis Redding records, and I thought I was writing a soul song at the time. And I think when I wrote it, I had this kind of rough idea in my head of what it was going to sound like once the band started playing it. And then the band started playing it, and I was like, oh God, what is happening? This isn't at all what I had in mind. And then I just kind of let them go and let the idea develop, and it came to be really more of this bluesy rock song. And a lot of that came through with Matt's drum part. It was a real heavy dun 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 that I didn't have that in my head.
So you didn't hear that part. Matt just kind of put that in there.
No, not at all. And that's how that band has always worked. Those guys are gonna play what they're gonna play for the most part. And I think as we've gotten more mature as musicians, we've learned to collaborate and give each other ideas a little more. But at the end of the day, those players are going to play what they're going to play, and that's why the New Old Fashioned sounds like the New Old Fashioned. So just trying to lean into that as much as possible on this new one, and not come in with any preconceived notions of what the finished product is going to sound like. Here's an idea. What are we going to do with it, or can we even do anything with it?
Oh, absolutely. If you're just tuning in, we're talking with David Payne of the New Old Fashioned, Heather Redman The Reputation, the Midwest Business Machine. He's put out several solo records as well. David, earlier you mentioned that there's much more collaborative songwriting. Could you talk more about that? How has that evolved for the New Old Fashioned?
I think a big part of it has just come from me being a little less stubborn as a songwriter, and like I said, keeping those things open-ended because those guys have great ideas and they have a lot of them, and when we give the time to explore those ideas, something cool usually happens. And I think maybe early on I was a little bit more resistant to that because I was, before we started the New Old Fashioned, I had done a couple years solo, and that first record really came out of songs I wrote as a solo artist. So I kind of had an idea of how I wanted the songs to sound and feel, and once I, gave that sort of stubbornness up a little bit, things started to get easier to put songs together, and the ideas would go places that I didn't have in my head, and that's really exciting too.
How was it easier?
Not fighting to get a player to play exactly what you want to play, as opposed to what they want to play. And when you're in the studio, there's different approach. There's the band approach to things, and there's the solo artist approach to things. And the New Old Fashioned has always been a band. Whether I was fighting that early on or not. And I think sometimes in the studio, people can get a little hung up on, unless you're bringing someone into the studio who is a studio ace that has a ton of studio experience and can play whatever you want, and it's really easy for them to pick up, because different musicians communicate in different ways. The language is not always set in stone, and different people have different ways of describing the way certain things are. And you get a drummer like Brian Hoflick, who's a studio ace here in town. He can play anything you want.
Yeah.
And you can usually, no matter what your language is for music, you can usually communicate to him what he wants. But that's not how most players are. Most players play the way they play.
So their style or their feel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can talk about it until you're blue in the face, but at the end of the day, most of the time, you need to bring in players who you trust, who you know what their capabilities are, and know that they're going to be able to pull off, either they're going to be able to do what you want them to do, or that you're comfortable letting them do what they do. And in the New Old Fashioned, that's the key to making that band work well, is like those guys have to play it how they're going to play it. And we can talk about it a little bit and bounce around ideas, but at the end of the day, like, those guys have signature styles, and I wouldn't want it any other way.
Well, that's also, I think, fairly vulnerable, right? You're opening yourself up to other people saying, well, like this chord progression or this cadence or sequence or whatever, this isn't working. How about we do this, right? You've got to really be open to other people's suggestions. You've got to really allow yourself to be vulnerable.
Right, and having my other outlets makes that 100 times easier.
Why do you say that?
Because when it comes to my solo stuff, or even the Business Machine stuff, in a certain sense, that stuff I'm dictating a little bit more what's going to happen. I've got more control over over that situation, because that's just the way we do things. That's it's David Payne and the Midwest Business Machines, and that's I wanted some players that would play these songs in a way I wanted them played, but at the same time, like, I got that's why it's the players that it is, because I know those guys are going to play it the way I'm hearing it.
You guys gel really well.
And that's a style, and it's a stylized thing too. Like, we're playing these songs in this style, and these guys play well in this style.
Gotcha.
So, I have that freedom and a little bit more control over the final product with that stuff. Whereas in the new old fashioned, I don't want it. I don't want full control over it. Like that's the fun of being, part of the fun of being in that band is it is pretty well 100% collaborative. I might be driving the bus most of the time, but when it comes to musical ideas, it's very much a democracy in that band.
So does it really come down to like each member gets a vote?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes it's like, well, we don't, this guy has this idea, this other guy has this other idea. Which one are we going to go with? And sometimes it really just does come down to like, well, I don't know if it's so much like, okay, let's take a vote. But
right.
It's like, what do you think? What do you think? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we go with the group on it.
So David Payne here in the studio. He is involved in several different projects. Check out his music, The New Old Fashioned, Heather Redman The Reputation, and of course his fine solo records. You've also been working quite a bit with Harold Hensley, who I will call, until the day I die, the golden voice of Dayton roots music.
Yeah, Harold's one of my greatest friends, and I think Harold and I understand each other pretty well. I think we come from pretty similar places as songwriters, and his songs have always meant a lot to me, and it was a great joy to be able to work with him on this last record. I think it helped us both through a difficult time when we were all locked up at home, and he started sending me tracks, and I started adding things and sending them back, and it was a lot of fun, and I'm really proud of what we were able to come up with on that record. And this one in particular that you're about to play, Skin and Bones, is probably my favorite song Harold's ever written up to this point, at least.
I've got to throw in an argument for keys.
That's a really special one, and a really personal one he wrote about his dad. So that's a really special one too. I think this Skin and Bones was the second song of the batch he sent me, and this is before we knew we were making a record. He just sent me a couple of tunes he recorded, versions of, and then when he sent them to me, the title track was the first one, and this was the second one, and then I just sort of immediately started adding a little bit to them, and he sent me the project files, and I started messing with the mix a little bit and sending them back, and then all of a sudden it was like, okay, I think we're doing something here, and he sent me Skin and Bones, and I must have listened to it like 20 times in a row when he first sent it to me, because I was just enamored by the song.
Oh, it's a gorgeous song.
Such a well-written song.
Oh. You're a good interviewer. It should be up just a smidge more. Oh, and it doesn't rush, right? It lets the setting, just kind of flow. I do think he's a phenomenal songwriter.
Yeah, and he's he's a lot more prolific than me too. He writes a lot more than I do.
Oh, does he? I know he writes often, and he makes it a point to write often.
Yeah, he's a little. I think he's a little more disciplined about it than I am too. Because I hear that from some of my favorite songwriters, where it's a sort of a part of their daily routine, where it's like, I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna spend X block of time working on this as much as I can, and I've never really operated that way.
Yeah.
I'd probably have a few more songs if I did, but a lot of times when I'm writing, it's in the middle of the night or something, Like
you've got family obligations.
It's at these little found moments where it happens. And
did you ever find yourself doing something and an idea pops in, so you make a quick voice memo or
all the time.
Quick notes on paper?
It happens way more that way than
when you try.
Than when I try. Yeah.
Huh. Well, that's the interesting thing about creativity, right? I know there are people who can work at it and work at it and work at it, and it's always forced. And then folks who they'll be doing one thing, like they'll be washing the dishes or whatever, right? And they'll just boom, and they like they're driven, like something is flowing through them.
I think probably most of the best writers, it's a little combination of both.
Yeah. Oh, was there something in particular you wanted from the Heather Redman record?
No, any of this is fine. whatever your favorite is.
I think I have all of them. Well, okay, my favorite bounces back and forth. It's almost like a daily thing, you know.
My favorite is Tryin'.
I can do that. We get a lot of calls for Step Back Girl, Prove It To Me, Step Back Girl, The Get Down.
Yeah.
I don't know who she is. Her name is Cindy with an I, because that's how she introduced herself on the phone. And she's like, "Hi, it's Cindy with an I. I listen all the time. And can you play The Get Down for me?" Like, yes, I can.
Yeah, those three are probably the more exciting.
Well, Daydream's a pretty good
rockers.
song too. I don't know. I'm a fan of the record. I think Heather's got a vocal gift.
I think so too.
Well, I mean, the first time outside of Neo American Pioneers was one of those like lunch things at South Park Tavern, and obviously because of Neo American, I knew she could sing. She's got chops. But I don't think I'd heard that was like the first time I heard a bunch of those songs that came on the record. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, damn. And I look around the room, right? I always like to look at the room, and there are people like holding a piece of pizza, they're gonna take a bite, but they're like stopped. And I'm like, okay. Or when someone's holding a drink, like they're gonna take a drink, but like they stopped. Uh-huh. Like, that says something to me. Sorry, I didn't have a chance to get waters today. My apologies, man. If you need something, I could always run to the cafe.
I'll be fine.
But because I look around the room and there were a bunch of people like that, and I'm like, okay, we got something here. And you feel like you're in a secret club when you see that happen. And that was a killer set too. You guys killed it. Well, I gotta find less violent metaphors.
Yeah.
It was fireworks. Yeah, I'm starting to write more reviews on the blog, and so I know I've got here later this week or next week. I'm posting review on that record, and then I've started. While I'm setting up, I might as well be playing things, so I started playing like entire records from people.
Yeah.
And there were a couple records that just came out. They're like, "Hey, anything you want to do spotlight?" I'm like, "I can do that."
Nice.
So I know we're gonna play. Is it next week or the week after? I've got Heather's record. We're just gonna do the whole thing.
Nice.
And I don't hear any swear words, so please tell me if I'm wrong.
We're all good.
Because I don't have that much money.
Yeah, we're all good.
And I know there's like the new Smug Brothers record is in the queue, and
so you're playing the whole thing's on this show,
or like the hour before.
Okay.
I like this pre-show kind of
sure.
thing. And I'm like, I'm already in here setting up and running things, ingesting songs into the system and stuff like that. I'm like, well, I should take advantage of that hour. Red spotlight on some music and
Sure.
different folks, especially folks in our area. But mics are hot. Heather Redman and The Reputation here on your Tuesday afternoon alternative on WUDR Dayton. We are rocking the Gem City, music in all directions. Support your local music scene. We are here with David Payne of one of my favorite bands, The New Old Fashioned, and it was so good to see you guys play Dayton Music Fest this weekend. And you must have been busy, right? You played Friday night, you were with Heather Redman and The Reputation, and then Saturday you've got The New Old Fashioned.
No, we were both on Friday.
Or both on Friday. Yeah. See, thank you for the correction.
Double duty that day. We were just hanging out on Saturday.
See, it all kind of blurs in my mind at this point.
Yeah.
I think I saw like 13 bands or musicians, across Yellow Cab, Trolley Stop, and Blind Bobs. Great. But it was such a great night. Well, okay, so you did two in the same night. Do you ever you walk off at the end of the night? Wow, I'm just so tired.
that usually doesn't hit till I get home.
Okay.
The adrenaline rushes, or until it's time to pack everything up.
Oh, do I have to do this?
Yeah, it's like you just play. You play this great show, and you're kind of riding that high, and maybe you're having a couple of drinks with friends, and then you're sitting at the bar, and people start to filter out, and then you look back at the stage, and your rig is the only one still set up, completely set up. And you're like, oh my god, I gotta tear that down and put it in a car still.
Yeah. And I guess that would sort of be, obviously you have to, and it's necessary for so many reasons, but you just want to kind of still just live with the feeling of the show you just played.
Yeah. I don't want to case these guitars up.
I'm also just curious, as someone who's become much more involved, with sound production, right? You mentioned Harold Hensley's record, the stuff that you've been working on with Patrick Himes at Real Love Studios here in town. I'm just curious if you find that the production side, you're using a different part of your brain than when you're writing or performing.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, they're definitely different things, and I go back and forth on which one I love more.
So there, it's not like a chore, or you don't feel like it's a chore.
Oh, not at all. Yeah, no, I mean, there are times I think with any kind of art where if you're pushing yourself to advance your art, that it's probably not all gonna be roses all the time, but I think for me it is most of the time. We have sessions where we can't, we're trying to do something that we just can't get, or it's just not happening that day, or we have a rehearsal where everybody's tired and nobody really wants to be here, but we got a show this weekend and we got to make sure that's tight or whatever. But I'd say those are pretty far in between for me. For the most part, I'm having a good time.
So is it just the joy or the spirit of making music?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much as simple as that. Yeah.
Well,
I like
what does that
as
feel
far as
like?
being in the studio. I like the science of it too.
So like the actual sound balance.
Yeah, and that's something I'm still very much learning. I'm very much a turn the knob till it sounds good kind of engineer. I'm much less technically skilled than some other guys. So I'm just learning all the time, and try to gather as much of that technical information from the many great engineers that I know and get to work with. So.
And how do you know? It's one thing to make your own music, right? And we've talked quite a bit about like when it sounds right to you, and
sure.
letting collaboration flow through across the members of the band. But when you're working on somebody else's music that's not tied to any of your projects, right? How do you know when it sounds good to you?
That's much more challenging for sure. I think all you can do is make it sound how you would make it sound, and then collaborate with the client on if they like it, or which direction they'd like to see it go. But at least for me, it's like I kind of have to use my own style of making records as the starting point, and then we can collaborate. We collaborate from there, or if we get a chance to do any kind of pre-production, which is sort of a luxury sometimes. That makes it a little easier to get a starting point of like this is what we are trying to do. I'll get a little closer, but like I said, with my style of recording, I'm not as good at I want to make a record that sounds like this. Like, okay, like we'll try our best, but at the end of the day, like my recordings are probably going to sound at least a little bit like me. Just maybe that's inexperience, maybe that's just the way I learned to do it. I'm not sure, but that whole I want it to sound like this is not really something I do a whole lot. I try my best if that's at the end of the day, it's whatever the client's trying to do is what I'm trying to do. But you know, I think I work a lot better and I do my best work when it's a collaboration between artist and producer engineer.
Sounds like a lot of communication.
Yeah.
Like you really got to get to know what somebody wants.
It's probably the most challenging part of making a record.
Yeah.
With somebody that's not somebody you're, you know, when it's a project I'm involved with or one of my close friends that I know the songs pretty intimately just because of being around them so much.
You know them.
That's a lot easier. When it's kind of starting from scratch with somebody that you don't know as much, like learning how to communicate with each other in the studio is sort of step one.
Okay. Well, I'm just curious what that conversation looks like. Do you or do the people that you're producing or working with, will they make like a reference? I want this to sound like Oasis, or I want this to sound like Hank Williams, or you know, what's that conversation like, at least in your experience, David?
I don't think that happens to me very often. But you know, when it does, you know, I think part of that conversation is usually like, well, okay, we're not Oasis here, so I get what you're, you know, but for most people, like that's a reference point. Like you're saying, like this is kind of what I had in my head when I was writing this song. This is what I'm going for. So I think the first step is going, okay, like, well, it's not going to sound like Oasis,
right?
You know, it's going to sound like you and us, but you know, I get what you're saying. We want some jangly guitars. You know, we might want, you know, a big piano part and a big sing-along chorus. Like, there's things you can derive, you know, you can
like
get
that.
from that reference.
Yeah.
But, you know, it. I think if you're trying to make unique and original art, like, you shouldn't be painting yourself into that box anyway.
Oh, I gotcha.
Like, talking about what the influence are for this particular piece of music is different than like I want it to sound like this.
Gotcha.
Because if that's your goal, I might not be your guy. But I don't think that that's most people's goal. Even when they say I want it to sound like Oasis, I don't really think that that's the goal.
Yeah, I've always...
That's the inspiration for this track.
Right. I've always wondered if what you're saying, that exactly like you mentioned a moment ago, you want big guitars. You want some jangly, like a jangly rhythm part in there. You want, you know, you want like almost the occasional like lead guitar playing arpeggios or something, right?
Sure.
I almost wonder.
It's funny that you bring this up because this exact scenario was a session I just recently had with Mike Bankhead.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I want this song to sound like Oasis. And I knew what Mike, you know,
I did not know that.
Mike and I have worked enough
together
that I knew what he meant. And I think we got it there. I think everybody's pretty happy with it, and I think it does probably sound a little bit like Oasis.
So when well, I didn't know that. Okay, I'm so sorry, Mike. That was just not pointed at you as so much as just pulling a reference off the top of my head that meant nothing. I wonder if more of the conversation is about the feel of the track, or okay, this should be in G, or this should be in a. I wonder if it's a little more, the conversation's a little more technical.
Sure.
Or what would you say to that?
You know, it's different every time.
Is it really? So there's no one.
Again, that communication thing is usually the biggest hurdle to get over when you're making a record, because once, and that's another reason why people have a tendency to latch on to a producer they like and just keep working with them.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you learn how to communicate as artist and producer, that process gets so much easier. And you know, again, that's the biggest hurdle, because everybody, like I said, everybody kind of has a different language about, you know, what they mean when they're talking about certain aspects of making music that you got to figure out. You got to learn to talk each other's language a little bit.
Well, and I was just thinking about like Jason Isbell or several other artists that sometimes your producer is a member of your band.
Sure.
So or someone who's known you for a really long period of time.
Right.
So I think that speaks to your point. They communicate incredibly well.
Right. And then when you have that sort of relationship with your producer, it's really easy just to get, you know, to get down to it, because everybody's kind of on the same page. And when I say something, they know what I mean, and I know that they know what I mean, and
Mm-hmm.
and we can just, everything's a lot easier that way.
It almost sounds like you're talking about trust.
Oh yeah, that's a huge part of it. From your producer to the studio you're working with to the players you're bringing in, you got to be able to trust everybody. And again, I've seen people fight against bringing in a friend on a recording session because they're a friend. Yeah. And I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. I'm all about it. But sometimes that takes patience because that friend might not necessarily be able to play it the way you're wanting them to play it. So again, that comes back to finding players that you trust that can either do what you want to do, or you're going to be a little more hands-off and trust that they're going to play something great in the way that they play it.
Oh, that makes total sense to me.
Because sometimes you're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, and that doesn't always work.
Well, that's exactly what I was gonna say. That you're forcing something to be something that it's not.
Right.
And you might. Earlier, you were talking about like working with the guys in the New Old Fashioned and realizing that this song is not going to be what you thought it was, but having the trust or the relationship to be okay with that.
And that can be a magical thing sometimes if you stop fighting the process and let it be a little more organic. That some of the best sessions I've been in have been because something we didn't expect, that nobody expected to happened because it was this combination of this player, this song, this microphone on this day, and everybody's trusting each other and letting it happen, as opposed to again trying to shove that square peg into that round hole.
Do you have an example of when you caught like that moment or that lightning in a bottle?
Oh, I not off the top of my head specifically, I guess. I'd have to give that some thought. Maybe I'll try to think of one on.
No worries. Well, let's give you. We can give you a little bit of time here. You got a few minutes, David, and we're gonna play a sneak peek at some new music that David has coming on the horizon. I always play this song, Radio Waves, because obviously it speaks to college radio and some of the challenges of college radio. Although I think in the song it's more atmospheric, more weather.
Pro tip for all you young artists out there: if you want your song played on the radio, write a song about radio.
That's absolutely correct. Every damn day.
Juliet loves it too.
Yeah, that's exactly, and for exactly that reason. What was the joke that Tracy said one time? She's like, "Well, Art, you can be bought." Like, pause, and then you realize, yes, ma'am.
Oh.
And what was the name of the track again?
The new one?
Yeah.
Best Intentions.
Thank you so much.
If you don't mind, since you played this one,
yeah, oh, dude, go ahead.
Maybe we'll take a second to talk about Spurg.
Oh, yeah, of course. Sure, absolutely. Okay. I put it in there twice because I'm gaming the system. Let's see. I'm going to put it under me so no one else plays it. David. So just credit it to you?
Yes, yeah.
And I'm just for right now going to call it just the Best Intention single. And make sure nobody comes along to the second copy. That you talk about it. Sorry, I was just thinking you talk about unexpected things.
Yeah.
My goodness. There we go. No. I swear I can type. I am told I can type. Okay, now we're in. Yep, we're good, and it is listed correctly. So honestly, it's basically listed under my name.
Okay.
The only time that I find things that in there that are not there is when I can tell we need to double check this heavy metal song.
Yeah.
So the only person playing out of there is usually me.
Right.
or if there's any worries, I can delete it after I'm done.
No.
But I think it's pretty damn safe there with that label.
If there's some college kid that's like looking around and like, oh, look what I found, play it, that'd be awesome.
Fair.
Yeah.
That is very fair. Well, let's see. Why am I blanking?
I've always had a similar concept to like having our merch table set up.
Uh-huh.
Like, what if somebody steals something off of it? If somebody wants our music bad enough to steal it, go for it.
Let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anything. What do I have in the repeating arms? Oh, he's pretty awesome in the glow.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll let you do a station ID, jump into the glow, and then talk after.
Yeah.
Is that cool?
Love it.
Oh, and then let's come back here. I may have sang along to this a few times with it cranked up, just screaming my heart out. Because I remember it was when we reopened after the pandemic, it was the first song I played on the show.
Yeah.
And I was so moved by it, I played it 3 more times in a row. I played it 4 times in a row.
On the show?
Yeah, Tracy calls me. She calls me to like, I need to make sure you're okay. I'm like, I think I'm married well. I think she gets me. Well, and first of all, thank you for listening. But yeah, no. Yeah, you want something played on the radio, write a beautiful song about radio. I play this often. I love this show. And you worked that out beautifully. That's okay. Yeah, oh wow, yeah, just so heavy.
Yeah. Kind of came out of nowhere.
So I talked to so many people who were just like, I didn't, what do you say, in a situation like that, but I saw a couple people just run up to Harold and just hug him, not say anything and just hug him, and I'm like, that's what you say.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a phenomenal musician.
He really was.
And a sweet man.
And Brian was always genuinely happy to see you.
Yeah, I got that impression.
I was always genuinely happy to see him too.
Yeah.
He was a fun guy to be around, a great picker, and
Well, so glad that he got to play Levitt.
Yeah.
Right, and talking to Harold about that after it happened, it sounded like they had a blast.
And yeah, definitely the arm side. They got to do that a couple of times, but Rob Daxton posted a video when Sharon Lane played Levitt.
Yeah.
It was with Rob Daxton on upright and Spurk on mandolin.
Oh right.
And that was I was there. It was a really, really special set, and Rob posted one of those videos a few days ago. That was a really special set.
Yeah. Boy, it's sort of like a couple times a year I tell my students that I will give you 1 extra credit added to your final score at the end of the semester. I want you to do one thing, and all you have to do is tell me you did this one thing. Right? Now 1 point means nothing, so sometimes I'll do 2 or 3. But like, I want you to tell a bunch of people who you care about that you love them. Right? That's all you gotta do. Just tell them that you love them. Tell me you did that, and I add whatever we've decided, because they always want more. But and I can't blame them. I would do the same thing in their place. But You know, especially like okay, yeah, Thanksgiving. Tell your parents you love them. You know, tell your brother who you're always fighting with that you love them. You know, tell your sister who you haven't seen in like a year and a half. Tell her you love her, right? And then just tell me you did it.
You know, I think
because you never know.
Playing music in this town has made me do that more. I think it's just because we're all, you know, most of us are the sensitive musician types.
Dayton is a hugging town.
And that's something that, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I do think there's something real about, you know, you're close to something. Maybe you can describe it, maybe not, but you're close to something beautiful. And so I think that means in some ways your emotions are closer, you're more in touch or whatever with those emotions. The Repeating Arms here on your Tuesday afternoon alternative. And of course, before that, you heard some fine music that I think the world of. You heard Radio Waves from the New Old Fashioned that was on a split, Hilltops and Highways, with the Repeating Arms. And of course, all of our goodwill, whatever positive energy we can send out from this radio station goes out to the Spurk family after the loss of Brian, who you heard playing mandolin there in the Repeating Arms.
Yeah, I'm going to miss Brian an awful lot. He was, you know, a giant player in town. He played in a ton of bands. Brian was always genuinely happy to see it, and I was always genuinely happy to see him. He was always a super fun hang and really fun to play with. I'm glad we got to make that record together. We had a lot of fun making it. We had a lot of cheeseburger pizzas. We were getting together on Mondays when we were recording that record at a friend's house, and it was Mondays when the Pizza Factory has their half-off pizzas.
Right.
So we'd always get a pizza and make some music. So, yeah, I'm gonna. You know, he was always somebody who was just there all the time because he played in 100 bands.
Well, and I noticed this, and you and I have talked about this before, that he didn't just show up when he was playing. He would come check somebody out. He would come listen to a band that I'm not sure, however he heard about it. And obviously he had an interest in acoustic instruments and Americana instruments, but...
Best mandolin player I've ever played with.
Amazing.
That I've ever heard play, yeah.
But several times, like, gosh, I met him several years ago at one of those winter folk festivals, and he was there the whole night. He hung around. Yeah. He listened to all the other bands, you know, and I appreciated just the fact that he just seemed happy.
Yeah, super
positive.
Smile. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, obviously, the loss of anyone is a tragedy, but I'm just gonna miss the fact that from a distance he might just give you a wave.
Yeah.
And a smile on his face.
When you play music with somebody, whether that's you're playing in the same project or you're just on the same bill together, there's a special bond that goes that goes with that, and you know, so even if it's people that you don't necessarily spend a ton of time with outside of the show setting, you know, you can still feel really close to these people because you're sharing something that you're so passionate about.
Yeah.
You know, so we all have that bond, and then being the New Old Fashioned Repeating Arms have played together more than any other band. We've played, the New Old Fashioned has played with the Repeating Arms more than any other band, and there was a few years there where we were playing together all of the time, and we were together all of the time.
I remember some of those, yeah.
So, you know, it's a big loss, and I'll sure miss them a lot. My heart goes out to those guys for sure.
So you're listening to your Tuesday afternoon alternative here on WUDR Dayton, rocking the Gem City, music in all direction. Support your local music scene. We're just about out of time, David, but we have a treat for you, dear listener. David is going to share an early version of one of the songs he's working on for his new Tomorrow, right? It comes out tomorrow.
It does not come out.
No. I am so kidding. I do this to you like every time. Like the new album, it comes out like next week or comes out tomorrow, and you are so kind. You should just smack me and tell me to shut up. But you're gonna share this music with us. What would you say about how that project is going?
It's been a lot of fun. It's call it my COVID record, if you will. Because, during that time where we were all locked down at home, you see a lot of my inspiration for songwriting comes from my interactions with people or my observations of people out in the world. And I wasn't having those observations at the time. Mm-hmm. And just the inspiration was just not coming. So, I'm sitting in my basement one day and I'm like, I gotta write something. I have to write something. And I've been listening to a lot of classic country records for several years leading up to this. And was, very interested in trying to make a more traditional sounding country record at some point. And, this was, I was able to give myself sort of a prompt to write from.
Yeah.
So the record is mostly based on the perspective of different characters in this same fictional bar. And that sort of, gave me a direction to write in, and that made it a lot easier to write at the time, because I was writing something sort of stylized, maybe even a little bit derivative at times, which was, was my intent. I wanted it to be a little bit stylized, and I had a lot of fun. Making it. I brought in Brian Hofleck to play drums, who has a very good understanding of how to play country music. The thing about country music, I think, is I don't think it's particularly difficult music. It's simple music. But you have to understand it.
Yeah.
Not just anybody can play it. You have to have an understanding of how it works. And then once you do, it's a fun, simple kind of music to play. And both Dan and Matt Spoggy, the twin country music titans in town, those guys have this encyclopedic knowledge of country music like nobody else I've ever met. And
they do.
Dan plays the steel guitar and Matt plays tic-tac bass and baritone and these traditional country instruments that not everybody plays.
Right.
So it was fun to have them in on some stuff, and then Patrick and I have done a lot of the of the others, and we've got John Lardenois from the Repeating Arms hopefully coming in soon to lay down some fiddle tracks. Had this incredible steel guitar player named Wayne Hobbs, who has played with Marty Robbins and Johnny Paycheck.
Yeah.
And just, it was great to have him in. This one we're about to play is called Best Intentions. It's going to be the first single. I'm hoping it's going to come out next month, but we'll see. Trying to make those plans right now. This one we were going for a little bit more of a Johnny Cash, Sun Records kind of vibe on this one. So.
Well, David, thank you so much. I know how busy you are, and to come in and talk music with me and allow me to give a sneak peek like this, it means the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I've told you a bunch of times, the only thing I like more than making music is talking about making music.
And I'm going to hold you to that. Thanks again, David.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Goodbye.
I'm headed to Cybertechnics right now. Yeah.
Oh, I totally hear that. I totally hear that vibe.